Hey guys, so today was our community day. We just had week 11, and in Latin that meant we covered lesson 4. So lesson 4, 4.1 was the Declension of Portus, so we have the fourth declension here, and then 4.2 was N with the accusative. So I don't have a piece of paper that shows all of my board notes, but I will post a picture of what our whiteboard looked like after the fact. But I started out with this vocabulary listed on the board, and this was pretty easy when it came to making our observations because there's not a lot to the fourth declension rules. So we identified that our genitive singular was us with a macron. We also noted that all of the nominative singular was also us, but no macron. So after taking a look at that, we came and we looked at our Rule 65, and we just walked through these. I think we sang our foundation song. We took a little bit of time to compare the difference between fourth declension and some of the other declensions. I think that we took a little time to just look at our chart and make simple observations. So a lot of times we're so used to looking at these charts with a vertical scan, looking at them this way. We took some time today and did some horizontal scans. And when I say that, I mean they looked at them this way. So we made some observations. I think we started with the fact that in fourth declension, somebody, when I was asking for just comments and observations about the fourth declension, somebody said that the dative and ablative for the plural were the same as third declension. So we had this ibis, us, ibis, while over here we had things like ibis, ace, ibis. Anyway, so at that point we were inspired to make more comparisons. So we looked this way right here. One of the things that we noted was, I think somebody said, well, all the ablative singulars are single letters and they're vowels. So we had an A, an E, an O, and a U. And let's see, what were some of the other things that we found? All of the accusative singulars, except for the various right here, they were all 2 letters and they ended with an M. Let's see, somebody said all the dative singulars are all vowels altogether. Some of them were 2 letters, some were single letter. I think somebody else spotted that in the genitive plural, all of the endings end with an of some sort. So we have arum, orum, ium, So looking at it that way, that'll help us to spot those genitive plural. Now, there are times where we also have some ums and ems up here. But anyway, let's see, what were some other observations that we had? Nominative plural was all vowels. Let's see, except for here. Oh, the fact that the dative and ablative in the plural was repetitive. Isasis, isosis, isais. We have the is here, and then we have all ibis and ibis here. Ibis, ace, ibis, and so on. So we just took some time kind of playing around with that and making some observations. So we were initially started out comparing fourth declension with third declension, and then we just were kind of comparing all of them. We took a minute to look at our pronunciation because we have U without the macron here and U with the macron in the genitive singular. We looked at our pronunciation rules, which honestly on this chart they're down here. The U without the macron is an and the U with the macron is more of an oo. Anyway, I'm not so great with the Latin pronunciation, but we try. Anyway, so we continued our reading about the rule, making the observation here that all of fourth declension, for the most part, is masculine. So that's why we have that highlighted. Let's see, what did we do next? I think we read through, we looked at the meanings, we identified some derivatives like the fact that cavalry are soldiers that are on horses, and in English the word equestrian has to do with a horse. There were a couple of them in here. So Adventus, we talked about an Advent calendar. We're, eager for the arrival of the birth of Christ. We compared portus with portas in portai in the first declension, which means gate, and the difference between gate and harbor. So we kind of talked through some of those things, and then we came down here, and at this point I had the kids reading the paragraph to me. So I work really, let me rephrase that. I try to focus on getting them to read the text and explain it to the class. We take turns with this. One person might read the first part of the paragraph. Somebody else might read, number 1 and so forth. Sometimes I'll be like, well, wait a minute. What did that just say? Can you repeat that? What does that mean? I think it's really important to try to teach these kids to figure out how to read a textbook and understand it for themselves. So this year in Challenge A, I do have a lot of the parents involved with the Latin, and I've been teaching them how to understand the Latin so that they can help their kids at home. But, let's be real. At some point, the kids are going to pass up their parents, and they need to be able to read the textbook and figure it out for themselves. Anyway, so we read through this, and we read this rule about whenever there's movement or motion expressed by the end, the accusative is used. And I think we talked a little bit about how what we know already about the word in Latin is that it takes the ablative. So we did a quick review of the prepositions that we know. In and cum take ablative. Propter and post take accusative. But here, apparently, they're introducing the idea that the word in can also take the accusative. And so we read through these examples and tried to identify the difference between these examples and the ones at the top of the page, of the next page. When there is no idea of movement or motion, the ablative is used. I think I might have even asked them like a silly question, like, where am I right now? And, eventually guide them to the point that I was in the room. And then I think I stepped out of the room, and as I was walking back through the door, I'm like, what am I doing right now? I'm walking into the room. And how one of those words involved state of being, and the other word involved movement. And in English, we express that with the difference between the word in and the word into. So we don't always necessarily, in our speech, we don't necessarily use it correctly. But believe it or not, this is something that shows up on standardized tests, knowing the difference of words, kind of like that. Anyway, so they had previewed and highlighted already. So we had the fact that in with the ablative is no motion, in with the accusative is motion. So we walked through our new vocabulary. We did look at these pictures and the fact that the soldier is moving into the forest. That's why there's an accusative ending here on the object of the preposition. Here we have an attack being made, which involves motion. So again, that would be why we have an accusative ending on our object of the preposition. And then we did these pictures, which are the same thing, but now we just have the guy's just on the hill. He's just standing there. Okay, he's not moving. It's just a state of being. So we have our ablative ending. And over here, everybody's just kind of sitting around at the campfire in the forest. So they're just there. They're a state of being. So then I had another student read this, and we tried to figure out what postpositive means, because that's a new word. Nobody had seen that before. And so I asked them, well, what do you recognize about that? And of course somebody said, well, post means after. And so after we read the definition, and where's the example? Oh yeah, sentence 4, we came down here, and without parsing it on the board, we just translated sentence 4 together. And the fact that it says, Caesar, however, was not with the army. The fact that the however, autem means however, is always going to follow the first word in the clause. So anyway, we talked through that just a bit. And then I think we did sentence 5 together on the board. So I'll walk you through that. So we copied it. And there's not one right way to do this. This just happens to be the process that I walked my class through and that I do with my kids here at home. But first, we always kind of start with Identifying and labeling the verb and getting a handle on where is the verb and is it singular or plural, because that will better help us to identify our subject. So I've just gotten in the habit of using the same colors for each of these sorts of things. Consistency is a good thing. Anyway, so we labeled I asked somebody find the verb. We did. We labeled it verb. I'm like singular, plural, and they're like NT, so it's plural. So we double line, underline for plural, and single underline for singular. We then, instead of going straight to our nouns, I've kind of started looking for words that are not nouns. That way, if there are prepositions, we could identify the noun that goes with that preposition. So we found a couple of prepositions here, propter, which we know takes the accusative. So we looked to this next word right here, and sure enough, we had an accusative singular ending. So we went ahead and labeled that as an OP. Then we have another preposition over here. Now this one can take either, we have just learned today that it can take either accusative or ablative. I believe that's why I chose this particular sentence, because I wanted one with this example. And so we looked at our noun here, and this was an accusative plural ending. So we knew that this is not N, but N2. So there's going to be motion in this sentence right here. So we labeled our object of preposition because it goes with our preposition here. So then I pulled up my green pen. We observed our nouns, and I just had a student pick a noun, tell me everything you know about that noun. It doesn't matter what order you do it in, other than we did first identify the endings. So I think one student, I believe we started with this one. And so we found the ending is orum. We identified that, I think he identified first that that was genitive plural, which means it's possessive. I'm like, what else do you know about it? Well, it's second declension, it's masculine, all the things that we know. All right. I think we did the same thing with gali. This one, it could be genitive singular or nominative plural. And so we tried to look for clues that would help us decide, is it genitive singular or nominative plural? And somebody said, well, you have to have a subject, but I reminded them you have to be careful of that because sometimes your subject is hiding right here. Maybe it's they came. Maybe you don't have another subject. It could be a subject pronoun. Anyway, but lo and behold, this one does end up being the nominative plural once we walked through and started looking at what the sentence, the context of the sentence. So we did basically our noun information on both of these. We identified this one as the subject because we noticed that we have the plural here, and this did line up and it made sense. When we looked at this is they came, I asked them, well, who came? And so they were like, oh, the Gauls came. The Gauls came into the forest. So we decided to cross out genitive singular and label that as nominative plural. And sure enough, in our check, we do discover that we have our subject-verb agreement. So we identified our translation and moved on. I will say on my whiteboard, I noticed that I did have a mistake on Silvas. I had not added the S. That was supposed to be plural, but in my whiteboard picture, I believe I have a singular one. I think after this, we did some vocabulary practice with some around the world. I divided them into two groups and let them play that with each other. And then we did something we haven't done before, and it was time. My moms are on board with this, so I have this little chart here that comes from all of the charts in the workbook that I use, and I pulled all of the vocabulary. I did a cut and paste job and created a little new document. This one, I don't have it written on top here, but this is all of the vocabulary from lessons 1, 2, and 3. In the charts that I have on my workbook, I just deleted the vocabulary that we haven't gotten to. And anyway, threw this chart together, and it's a front and back like this. So while they were playing around the world, I passed these out. They came back, and I had them right on top that it was, lessons 1 through 3, vocabulary. And then I wrote pop quiz. And so they were like, what? I was like, yeah, we're going to see what you know. So anyway, I was like, I'm going to give you 8-10 minutes and just write what you know. So I was like, you will be surprised at how much of this you actually do know, because these kids have been working really hard on their flashcards. So it is front and back, and I think that Even if you knew every single one, totally, completely, 100%, you didn't even have to think about it. With the amount of time that I gave them, I mean, you would probably have a hand cramp writing all of that information down. So I told them, I was like, that's a lot of stuff here. You probably won't finish it. You could take it home. You can finish it later. I will communicate with the moms. But anyway, there it is. And I will take a picture of the answer key. And they were all very surprised and impressed with themselves at how much they had accomplished. And it was like, wow, look at that. I know a lot of vocabulary. And some of them were like, oh, gosh, I need to work on these verbs or whatever. There were some that they were like, oh, I don't know those very well. So that helps them and kind of getting them ready for Blue Book and the vocabulary part of Blue Book. And so, anyway, I hope this is helpful, and I hope you guys have a great day. I'm so sorry it's so long.